Craig, he's gonna go in the split stance position. Go ahead and get your position. So one reason why I like it is it's a good either progression or regression from if you're on 2 legs, how to eventually get to single leg exercises. You can go in a split stance position where now we're biasing more of a weight on our front leg instead of our back leg, which then gets us eventually to single leg positions. Now there's a lot of things that you could do in this position. I guess what we'll do is I'm gonna start on the front leg. The front leg is gonna be our working leg, the one that we're primarily trying to address. So if we're doing a lunge, Craig's gonna have over 50% of his weight on his front leg. I usually like to shoot for 60 to 75% of the weight. Now the weight can be distributed however you kind of want it distributed. If you think of the foot, I like to think about it in 3 different options. We have the heel over here, we have the midfoot or the middle, then we have the balls and the toes. So if I wanted to bias the quad a little bit more, I'm gonna tell Craig to put his weight through the balls of his feet. He doesn't necessarily have to shift his weight, he did, which is normal, that's what you're gonna do. And that's gonna bias more of the quad, patellar tendon, quad tendon, whatever it is that we want, even some of the calf. Depending on what we might be rehabbing and what we want to target, that's where the weight shift's gonna go. If I want it to be in the center and not really bias anything, we'll go through the midfoot, which is right in the middle. Conversely, if I want to bias the glutes, the hamstrings a little bit more, or say I want to offload the patellar tendon, the quad tendon, I want to offload something in the knee after an ACL surgery, I'm going to go for the glutes. So now I'm going to have the heel. I'm going to have him drive his weight to the heel. This is all just in the setup, and this is just where their weight is, and that's going to bias if they go forward, if they go back. It's going to bias a lot of different things. So that's just where the weight is. Same exact concept as in the trunk. If he's straight up like this, and you think, without getting too much into biomechanics, if you think of lever arm, if he's back here, he's gonna have a bigger lever arm from the knee. What that means is the knee muscles, in particular in this stance, the quad is gonna have to work a little bit harder. So if I wanted to bias the quad and maybe take pressure off the butt, someone has a gluteal tendinopathy or something, I can go trunk up. Conversely, if I want to bias the glutes more and I want to take pressure off the knee, without changing the weight here, I can have Craig lean forward. And now we're going to be using more of the glutes, the hamstrings, and less of the quads. So that's how to go above and below to target different areas in the knee, take stresses on the knee, take stresses off the knee. Also the same thing at the hip. Now a big thing I think that people forget in the split stance is that it's not all the front leg. Yes, the front leg is the priority. This is what we're actually going for. We're working this front leg, but there's a ton of cool stuff you can do on this back leg. Scoot forward a little bit. So in this, right now Craig's in what's called a high split stance position, meaning he's a lot higher. If he were to go lower, he'd have to bend the leg more, maybe even a little bit wider. That's a low split stance position. So if we're in the high split stance, you go in the high split stance, you can really work on someone's hip flexibility on this back right leg. So Craig's up, heels up, I can have him cueing, butt squeeze, going into posterior pelvic tilt, and I can say, all right, where do you feel a stretch at all on the back leg?
I would need to go a little bit further.
So he needs to go a little bit further. So now we might be doing exercises over here where we're working on the quads and the butt, but I can also be getting a hip flexor, like iliopsoas stretch, on this back leg by keeping the knee bent. Conversely, we can also go for the other anterior chain muscles, like the quads, more or less the rectus, and I can have him go into more of a low split stance, so go a little bit wider. He can bend the knee, think about driving the knee back a little bit, and now we're getting a little bit more into the rectus. And this is all just back leg. This is all just positioning. There's not even any movement going on yet. This is just what position he's in. Something to, yeah, sorry if you're getting tired. For people to load this front leg too, without having to get technical and tell people how much weight to put forward, where to lean, anything like that, one of the first things I like to do is say, okay, put one foot in front of the other. So if you just start 2 legs, you put one foot in front of the other like this, and all we're going to do is just want you to pick up your back heel. Picking up your back heel already shifts the weight, however much weight we want on the front leg, and then you're in a pretty much good position from there. Another thing also on this back leg, so we're going to continue off the back leg. We talked about the hip, stretching at the hip. You can work a little bit on the calf if you want to get a calf stretch. I cannot bias having them up. I can have them turn, make sure the heel's down, and now they can be getting a calf stretch while loading the front leg at the same time. At the same time, if they're up, if I want to go first MTP, maybe they have turf toe, maybe they're lacking some dorsiflexion, I want to give them some more range, I can have them do a really good plantar fascia stretch, first MPT stretch in this same position, all while again doing something for the front leg, but the position itself drives what I want: front leg, back leg, hips, torso, everything like that. I know Kelly Starrett talks a lot about positioning, and I think it's really, really important that you understand positions that you put people in, what you can get out of them, what are things that you can change, all small changes that you can make to target different things. With that, we will answer questions if there are any.
There's a lot of waving going on. There's a question with dorsiflexion, but you kind of addressed that. Ankle mobility for Dudes with Hardware and Ankles by Aloha. It's Mike. Mike kind of talked about that earlier.
Yeah. So I guess another one, ankle mobility too in this front leg. If you want to drive more ankle dorsiflexion in this front leg, you can have people keep that heel down and really shift over. This is almost like what you see a lot of times when people do ankle dorsiflexion stretch. A lot of times it's a little bit elevated. It's easier than getting on the ground. They can do that in this split position too and drive more ankle dorsiflexion on the front leg. And again, this is before any movement is happening. This is before any lunge, any posterior lunge, anything. This is just positioning that you can drive these things.
Yeah, I like using this for ankle mobility. So if someone does a lot of soft tissue work to their calf, they're working the gastroc with the knee and extension. If we want to drive a little bit of ankle dorsiflexion, knee over toe, whether it's here or if it's too much pressure on the knee, I'll get their foot up on something and actually drive the knee over. It's another way to work the ankle position because you definitely need that ankle mobility with the leg in front.
Next question, Revo Yoga, width and stance between feet, wide or narrow?
So I think it's all going to depend on what you want to do. When putting a patient in that position, I'm just going to say get in whatever position is comfortable, and then from there I'll make changes. So if someone goes super narrow and I tell them, okay, now bend the knees, and they look like this. This is not necessarily a bad position, but it could be improved upon depending on what I want. So what I talked about earlier, this is a very front-loaded, knee-dominant position. That could be what I want, and that's fine. If that's not what I want, then I'll say, okay, I want them to have a wider stance, because if I just tell them to lean back, then they're going to be having all the weight on their back leg, and now we're not doing anything on the front leg. So if I want to keep weight on the front leg, let's go a wider position, and now they're going to be able to load the front leg properly without loading too much into the knee. So it kind of just depends on what you want. I think you need to start with what people feel comfortable with and then move from there. Don't give them foot here, and force them into a position and then let them struggle with it. Put them in what they feel comfortable and then move them from there.
Then same thing with, so in terms of side to side width, I tend to tell people start with shoulder width apart and then just try get the 1 foot front here, 1 foot back there, because you can see how this looks versus if you try just walking a plank, you're doing this. I mean, now it's not just strength, but now you're adding some balance components.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so if people have balance issues, go wider if it's width this way instead of front and back width, for sure.
Last question, Sequit or Somia, I probably said that wrong, but any advice on strength stabilizing on knees? Basically summarizing this whole idea with the split stance.
Split stance. So I know a lot of times when people get in the split position or on a Bulgarian split squat position, anything, the back leg, a lot of times people have back knee discomfort. And I honestly think it's because people don't load the back leg enough, which is ideally what we want. We want people here for a lot of different positions. If I'm doing a split stance lunge and I want to work this front leg, I should be working through the back leg. But conversely, you can make it an exercise by working the back leg. I know we posted something like half kneeling liftoffs. So in this half kneel position, I'm like 50-50. If I want to, and again, I'm gonna be toes down, I'm gonna put my weight back on purpose, and then I'm gonna drive my foot into the ground, and now I'm gonna actually be working my back quad. So this is a good way to load the patellar tendon, load the anterior chain, load the quad tendon, and a way to improve resiliency of those tissues. So that way when you get in positions like this, it may not be bothering you as much. And again, if someone's back here and their weight's here, again, they're going to be using this back leg more, so you might need to shift them forward. But again, it's not bad to put them back here if that's what you're trying to work up to. Cool.
That's it.
Awesome, guys. So thanks for tuning in. Again, we're going to try to do these a little bit more often. Let us know if you have any feedback, any questions. This will be on IGTV and on YouTube and on Facebook and on Twitter and on every other channel.